I think that the product itself captures the imagination of many, many people. So the product itself is robust. We shouldn't be complacent and say it can never be completely bust. We have to adapt, make it, and I think we have. I think qualifying format, the races in the last few years, the general ambience in Formula One, I think, and the reaching out to fans, the way in which we've tried to understand, we've responded to fans. Some people don't like DRS, but the fact is, we, the teams, surveyed 85,000 people. The overwhelming feedback was we want more overtaking. Now, you can make more overtaking by having circuits that facilitate overtaking, and certainly you can do a better job there, but it's not always easy to change circuits. Or if we assume the circuits weren't going to change sufficiently, we had to do something about it. And to the purist, they're offended by DRS, but the fact is, we had hundreds of overtakes in a season. I should have the stats. I don't, but I'm sure it's orders of magnitude more overtaking occurred, and some purists don't like that. I can understand that, but I think you can't go out and survey 85,000 people, get an overwhelming finding, and then say, yeah, but we don't actually accept that. It's not what we in the sport. What's the point of asking people? They asked for it. We delivered a sensible way to achieve it. It did achieve it. It's tunable, so the authority of DRS you can make it easier and harder, and it creates a degree of artificiality. But ultimately, if you tune it right, it's made some interest. Some races, there are still some circuits that without DRS, stroke KERS, and the Pirelli contribution of tyres, you would have very, very mundane races, frankly, and yet fans were still watching, but I think we've improved it. The show has been better for the last 2 years. The ambience in Formula 1 has been better. We're talking about the right sort of things. We're not doing enough, inevitably, because Formula 1 sometimes is too introspective, it's too infighting, and all those issues, which are deeply frustrating to many of us, but it's still a great sport. And we still we've made some progress, and we can still make a lot more progress in the next few years.
Well, it was a great show in 2011, Martin, and a lot of that was the contribution from your team. Some of your wins and some of the races were just spectacular. I guess you're frustrated. Nothing worse than finishing second, as Peter War used to say. It reminds you how close to winning you got on occasions. An arrow is still the catchword of Formula One, and I noticed today John Eiley leaving McLaren. I was chatting to Chris Saunders, a new guy you've just hired. Lots going on the arrow side, and let's talk a little bit about that and the job Adrian Newey's done, and how your season went from your perspective.
Well, I'll start with our season, and I'll talk in a more general sense. I think our season, you're right, coming second in both championships is a little bit disappointing. We had 6 great wins. We had 18 podiums. So we come out of it with 24 more trophies, and that's important to the team. But and it could have been worse. And particularly if we look at our winter, then it was atrocious. It was the worst winter in living memory of, certainly for McLaren. When in reality our first long distance completed was the Australian Grand Prix. And so we conducted a winter testing session where we were slow, uncompetitive and unreliable. So I think it was a good recovery for the start of the year in the circumstance, and I think the teams worked incredibly hard to get us back. But we were in slight catch-up mode. We turned up. We could have won some more races. We could have lost some more. But I think I think the team has responded well after a difficult winter. I think for the drivers, I think they're both extraordinary drivers, both world champions, both great assets, and we're very proud to have them. Jensen's probably exceeded expectations, if we're frank about it. People had a view of Jensen before he was in McLaren. I think he's driving better and more confidently than ever, and I'm delighted for that. Lewis won the equal number of races to Jensen. They both won 3 apiece. But by Lewis's extraordinary high standards, then he will have been disappointed, and people will have been disappointed in his season. But he had, nonetheless, he had some great wins and some great performance. I think it was a difficult year for him, but I think he's pretty determined, as I've known, having known him for a number of years. He will be back, and I think the signs, fortunately, you should say, mentally, at what point of the season was Lewis the strongest? Well, after a very tough season, after a disappointing season, you'd say he was mentally strongest at the last race. And I think that's a good omen for the sport, and certainly for us at McLaren. So he will want to come back and remind people what a great driver he is. In the meanwhile, Jensen, I think, has grown in stature and confidence, and he'll be there to race. And we've got I think, in some ways, an unusual team in that we do have two drivers who absolutely, and we've seen it a few times, they got a bit too close and occasionally overlapped, but they want to race and they want to beat each other. And it's that old story in Formula One that people have to understand, that a racing driver in a Formula One team, the first driver he wants to beat is his teammate. Now, in our team, I think that's particularly focused because we've got two great drivers, and it's very clear inside the team and outside the team that they're given every opportunity to beat each other.